A local eviction battle in San Francisco shows the complete failing of rent control laws. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I actually have another article for you today, and it's about rent control, and once again, it's about San Francisco, California. And as you know, there's only a few major cities and places across the country where rent control laws actually exist, and San Francisco is actually one of those places. And I came across this article, and it really was interesting because they basically it's the plight of these tenants that are in this rent controlled building, and they're all getting evicted because of one of the loopholes in the rent control laws in the state of California that allows the property owner to actually get rid of the tenants in there. And so, it's really quite interesting, but it actually points out a lot of the flaws in the rent control system and exactly the reasons why I don't like it. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Are you surprised that landlords are going to look for loopholes in laws such as rent control and still be able to, try to make a profit? I'm not, okay? It surprised these tenants, but they obviously weren't thinking in terms of why anybody would, invest in real estate in a place like San Francisco. The truth of the matter is, the only reason you do something like that is to make money. And that's exactly what they're planning on doing, these developers. So let's get into this article. This article comes from 48hills.org, and it says, Castro eviction battle shows total failure of state housing laws. And I'm assuming Castro is the neighborhood in San Francisco. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know much about the city of San Francisco as I've never lived there, never been there. But let's get into it. I do want to say before we get into it that this is a pretty progressive, left-leaning publication that I'm reading from. So do not even for 1 second think that these opinions reflect my own. All right, let's get into it. The utter failure of California housing law was on display today on 19th Street, where 20 residents of a rent-controlled building, many of them LGBTQ and Asian seniors, were fighting to save their homes from speculators who seeking to profit by evicting them under the Ellis Act. The building at 3661 19th Street was bought in 2018 by a group of investors who have a record of buying rent-controlled properties, tossing out the tenants, and flipping them as tenancies in common. In essence, condos. So right there, they're talking about a loophole in the rent control law in California called the Ellis Act. Okay, and so I'm looking this up right now. There's a little link that tells a little bit more about what the Ellis Act is, and it looks like what the Ellis Act says in it is that if a landlord is getting out of the landlord business, then they can actually remove tenants from these rent-controlled buildings. So in this case, what they're doing is they are converting the building into tenancies in common, or converting it into condos, right? And then selling each individual unit off. So condo conversions, this is a pretty common scheme for places where you have rent control in place, because developers, property owners, they can't really make a lot of money off of a rent controlled building because they just can't raise the rents. So what they do is they turn them into condos, and then they sell off each individual unit, and they're actually able to make a profit on their investment. So it works out well, but what these people who promote rent control don't realize is this is exactly what's going to happen to a lot of the housing stock. Okay, it's just not going to be rentals anymore, because if there's no money to be made in rentals, nobody's going to want to own it. The players in this operation, according to records on file with the state and the city, are Jeff Pollock and Ryan Fong of Redwood City, and Pierre Malak, who appears to live in San Jose. They have served tenants with Ellis Act papers, meaning they want to go out of the business of being landlords. But of course, they just recently bought the building. If they didn't want to be landlords, they had no reason to buy it. Well, They said they just recently bought it, and here it says that they bought it in 2018. And then they're wondering, well, why did they want to buy the building if they didn't want to be landlords? Because they knew that they could make money off of the building if they used this Ellis Act in order to remove these tenants and then, sell off each individual unit. So you only buy a property if you intend on making money. You don't buy real estate and say, well, we're just doing this out of the goodness of our hearts so that these people can live for super cheap here in San Francisco. That's ridiculous. And the thought that they even thought for 1 second that anybody would want to buy a building and then just keep renting it out at a loss. And that's the truth. That's probably what the truth of the matter is, okay? They are probably losing money every single month that they own this property. They were playing the long game, which is the appreciation game, and then the game of actually converting it over to condo units and hoping that in the long run they would actually make a profit. And that's how a lot of people do make a profit. They pay out of their pocket every single month for the losses because they can't make that money up in rent, So, I mean, it's a different type of game in a place like San Francisco. It's still real estate investing, and it's a lot, it requires a lot more money than it would somewhere like in the Midwest. But those who are good at it, they make a fortune. They make more money than I could ever make. No, as Deepa Varma, a longtime tenant activist, now working for Tenants Together, said at the event, there is no reason for this to happen at all except greed. The investors paid $6.3 million for the property, about $500,000 a unit. If they can get rid of the tenants and flip the units, they will almost certainly get $1 million each, in essence, doubling their money by destroying the tenants' lives. First of all, they're not destroying any tenants' lives, okay? These tenants have had their housing subsidized for however long that they've lived there by these rent control laws, okay? And these property owners, they have a right to actually make a profit off of the property that they own. And it says they've owned it since 2018. So this is a long-term play. They've been playing this out for 3 years so far, and they still haven't gotten it done yet. So these tenants here are trying to fight this, but so it might be a losing battle, but you never know. This is San Francisco here. They could end up getting the city on their side and then shutting down these developers. That's why these developers, a lot of them, they are very, very patient, but that's why they make so much money when they finally do succeed in doing what they're trying to do. I admire those who actually invest in a place like San Francisco. I could never be a landlord there. I've said that many, many times. I could never be a landlord there because I don't have the time, the money, or the patience to deal with all of the ridiculous mess that they have to deal with. Larry Quester, who described himself as a gay senior, has been living in the building for 31 years. The only reason I can stay here is rent control, he said. This inhuman corporation is about to evict seniors and working class people. I am afraid I am going to end up homeless. Paul Mooney, a longtime LGBTQ activist who helped found the anti-racist group and Castro for All, has been living in the building for 18 years. The owners are speculators, he said. 7 of these units are LGBTQ tenants who have been here for decades. So immediately they start playing, the identity politics game, trying to garner sympathy. Okay, we're not talking about identity politics. They're not getting rid of you because of whatever your persuasion may be. The only thing they're worried about is actually making money. But these two people here, they're a good case example of exactly why I don't like rent control, okay? One of them has been in the place for 31 years. The other one has been in there for 18 years. Now, a normal rental property, people don't stay that long. The only reason these people are still in there is because they have these artificially subsidized rents. And if they went anywhere else, they would not even have those rents. So what they're really doing is they're kind of like they're hogging all of the good properties and preventing people who, should be able to move into the area from getting a place. So, it sucks that you're possibly losing your home, but at the same time, you don't own the property. Okay? You don't. The landlords are the ones who own these properties. And all of the money that you save for the last 18 or 31 years on low rent payments, maybe you should have been saving it so that you could actually buy a place of your own instead of expecting to be given this handout for the rest of your life. And that's the worst part about this, okay? People expect rent control, they see it as an entitlement. Like, I am entitled to rent control. I deserve to only have to pay $500 a month for this apartment in the most trendy section of the entire city for the rest of my life. No, you don't. Okay? Nobody's entitled to anything. And if you wanted to be sure that you would have a place to stay for the rest of your life, you should have bought. You should have saved up money to make a purchase, but you didn't. And now you're just out of luck. So these landlords, good for them for finding a way to get around rent control, and good for them for being able to make a profit. But this whole situation, it just blows my mind how completely clueless these tenants are about the way that business is done. They bring up identity politics. They talk about greed. It has nothing to do with any of that. This is just business, okay? And we deserve to make a living just like everyone else.